All right. Our speaker today is somebody who is well known to us and much beloved by us. Religious science minister and wonderful storyteller and heartfelt speaker, Reverend Jan Limberg Morgan. Come on up, Jan.
Something that Brian said earlier really kind of got me when you said something about life's a bitch and then you die. Yesterday, this has been the week that tested the soul. You know how you have some weeks where you have something going every day? Well, I've had a week where I've had two things going every day, and I felt like I was running, and I really was very proud of myself because my talk was just about ready to go, just needed a little cleaning up. And my computer froze yesterday morning. I lost most of what I'd done. And when I got it all finished, my printer threw a tantrum. I thank heaven, the divine, for the young man at Office Max that told me how to fix my printer. He was a blessing to me, and I was so grateful. But I do have to tell you this. I believe that if you can't laugh, then, life's not so much fun. By last night, I was hysterically laughing at everything that was said. I just laughed. I couldn't help it because it seemed like if it could go out of my way, then anyway, here we are. And may something that I say this morning find a place in your heart, that it may go with you and nourish you this week. The theme for the month is empowerment. When Reverend Brian sent me that information, I'm like, okay. And I ran through all of the different ideas of what empowerment might be. And I came up, personally for me, the word freedom was closely aligned with empowerment. So if I use the word freedom, please understand I'm talking about empowerment. Since the earliest stories of humankind, there have been eagles, Lao Tzu, Buddha, Jesus of Nazareth, Mahatma Gandhi, Marie Curie, Mother Teresa, Myrtle and Charles Fillmore, Martin Luther King, Nelson Mandela. Now, this list is not exclusive. It just scratches the surface of all of the names of those whom could and would be included. But for each of these beings, an inner knowing led them to live from the conviction of their hearts, from that place of personal power inside. They placed their own personal freedom to follow their own path ahead of a safe and secure one. And in doing so, each one changed the world. Major religious movements grew up around Lao Tzu, Buddha, and the master teacher Jesus. All of them revered as enlightened beings. Mahatma Gandhi lived and taught peaceful resistance, and he gave a new perspective to changing the social order. Marie Curie, she had a passion for science, and that passion led to the discovery of radium and X-ray, and this formed massive medical advances. Her scientific achievements were not exactly accepted by the men of the day, but she didn't care. She didn't allow the social norms to get in her way. Mother Teresa taught selfless love and compassion. Compassionate service, actually, is how she termed it. One of my favorite stories about her is, I can't remember the name of the philanthropist, a noted philanthropist, was interviewing her on a TV show. And he asked her what he could do to help her cause. And she replied, "At 4 a.m. tomorrow morning, meet me under the bridge where the homeless and the sick gather, and together we can serve them breakfast." It didn't involve writing a check. Myrtle Fillmore refused to accept the medical prognosis for her life. And with her husband, Charles, she went on to build Silent Unity, and ultimately Unity as we know it now, a worldwide New Thought church organization. Martin Luther King was inspired by Gandhi. He started his own revolution, one that continued on after his death with the success that he had visualized but didn't live to see. Nelson Mandela endured imprisonment and torture in his own country, South Africa. He refused to bow down to oppression and discrimination, and he did live to see his vision filled. What power within impelled each one of these? Dr. Ernest Holmes tells us frequently and clearly that God, Spirit, the Christ presence within each one of us motivates, guides, and empowers. You know, Ernest Holmes himself was an eagle. His desire to comprehend the relationship between God and man. In that process, he became a powerful teacher, spiritual leader, and actually, you might not know this, but very reluctantly, the founder of the Science of Mind Church. He didn't want a church. That wasn't what he wanted, the Institute of Religious Science. But that was swept out of his hands, and it became a church. I'd like to tell you a story that I heard quite a long time ago, and I think about it under certain circumstances. A baby bird fell out of a nest. It was above a farmyard, and it landed right in the middle of a brood of tiny chicks. The mother hen gathered the brood together, including the newcomer, and took them to peck in the grain. The mother hen didn't know what to make of this new chick. It didn't stay in line, and it kept trying to fly. She knew it was different, so she scolded the little bird, told him to stay close to her for safety. When he tried to fly to the top of the fences, the roosters would peck at him and told him he wasn't old enough to do the work of a rooster. So he pecked in the farmyard, daydreaming as he watched the huge bird circling above him. Early one morning, the little bird couldn't sleep. He managed to fly to the low branch of a tree. And there an owl looked at him and said, "Hey, kid, what's a bird like you doing in a farmyard?" "I'm a chicken, and that's what chickens do. That's where they live." "Nah," said the owl, "not sure what you are, but you definitely ain't a chicken. You belong up there with the birds that fly by day." That really frightened the little bird. He couldn't tell Mother Hen that he wasn't a chicken, and if he told the roosters, he'd be pecked out of the flock. So he kept quiet, and he went back to scratching in the dirt. Time went by, and little bird frequently flew to the top of the barn, and Mother Hen thought that he was now totally out of control. And one day, a large bird alighted alongside him. "Who are you?" asked little bird. "Why, I'm an eagle, just like you," said the older bird. "I'm an eagle?" said the little one with surprise. "You mean I'm one of those birds soaring in the sky?" "Of course," answered his new friend. Come with me and I'll show you how to fly like that. Little bird looked down in the farmyard, and he thought with such gratitude of everything that Mother Hen had done. And then he raised his wings and soared into the sky to join his own kind. Little bird really did not realize his divine birthright was to soar. And do we realize that our divine birthright is to soar? Do we realize that we don't have to stay pecking in the farmyard? That the only thing stopping us from flying is that we don't really know who we are. One eagle that comes to mind for me is Rosa Parks. She spent most of her life making no waves. She earned a living for herself and her family. And one day, quietly and with dignity, she reclaimed her power, her personal freedom. She recognized who she really was, and she said, no. With that, she lifted up generations of her own people and changed the face of a nation. I recently learned quite a bit about the author James Michener. I'd always thought of Michener as this very successful, prolific writer of wonderful novels, but I never really thought about the man. He was a Navy lieutenant pilot in World War II, and he'd been assigned to the South Pacific. And he learned the importance of expressing his power on a very stormy night in the South Pacific. He was making desperate attempts to land his plane on the Tontuta Islands airstrip, but he couldn't do so. After several attempts in the dark and storm of the night and with white knuckles, he finally landed the plane. He went outside and walked the length of the airstrip, realizing what little space he had had to land in, and looking at the dim outline of the mountains that he had barely missed as he flew around. And I'm going to read you his words. As I stood there in the darkness, I caught a glimpse of the remaining years of my life, and I swore an oath. When peace came, if I survived, I would live the rest of my life as if I were a great man. I did not presume to think that I would be a great man. I had never thought in those terms, but I could conduct myself as if I were. I would adhere to my basic principles. I would bear public testimony to what I believe. I would be a better man. I would help others. I would truly believe and act as if all men were my brothers, and I would strive to make whatever world in which I found myself a better place. In the darkness, a magnificent peace settled over me, for I saw that I could actually attain each of those objectives, and I never looked back. James Michener made good on those oaths, on that oath, and those decisions. He was a successful author that wrote over 40 major books. His books were turned into Broadway plays, Hollywood movies, and television series. In his lifetime, he donated over $100 million to education and charitable causes. At his death, he left most of his estate to Swarthmore College, where he'd earned his BA. That's an eagle, if I've ever seen one. We all know and are inspired by eagles. Maybe not eagles in the way the world defines them, but eagles nonetheless. Over the years, I've worked with many people who've inspired me, and I've admired them. However, one will always stay with me. I don't know if everyone here has heard of Achievement House. Achievement House is a charitable organization that provides employment and education to adults with challenges. And I was the chief operating officer and vice president of Achievement House for a number of years. There was a young, not so young lady named Barbara, who was one of the little people. To hug Barbara, I had to get down on my knees. She worked at Achievement House for over 30 years, and part of that time was in the administration office. And because of my position, her supervisors answered to me. My office door was always open to her, and believe me, she often came in and talked over her concerns. She had no limitations. She inspired the other adults with disabilities, and she challenged them, she loved them, and she advocated for them. By most standards, Barbara appeared to have many challenges to overcome, but that didn't concern Barbara. Shortly after I retired from the organization, she left to take a part-time job at Kids Play in San Luis Obispo. Then she took a second job at the San Luis Obispo Adult Education. And in addition to that, she was in the child care department of her church. You know, by most people's standards, she had severe health challenges, but they didn't slow her down. She and her mother traveled all over the United States by bus to little people conferences and to sightsee. That was their joy, was traveling and seeing new places. And by the time her mother passed, they had toured most of the United States. Barbara is still with us. I get to see her maybe about once a year when the chorus that I sing with sings at the place that she lives. And I get to walk in and get down on my knees and hug her. There's no doubt where her guidance comes from. Her presence radiates love to all. As I visualize her with her backpack and her walking stick, I can see her wings. Now, some people would call them angel wings, but I know they're the wings of an eagle. What are the qualities of an eagle? They have a personal sense of their own identity. They have a great love for life. They value freedom above all material comforts. They're motivated from within. They're authentic and passionate about life. And they trust in divine inspiration and support. And what about us? Are we empowered or are we fearful? Whether it's fear of failure, fear of success, fear of looking like a schmuck, fear of rejection, or fear of whatever, fear limits us in developing our natural potential. It also commits us to living tiny little lives, and that's like wearing tiny little shoes after our feet have outgrown them. When we put the fear to rest, we can think bigger, we can act bigger, we can live bigger, and we can play bigger. And in doing so, we embrace empowerment. Within each one of us, there's an eagle that knows how to soar. The freedom of this country was earned with the lives of eagles. Change and growth in the world through powerful ones who knew the source of their own strength. All of the eagles I've talked about are prior to the 21st century, but there are many eagles out there changing the world who have not yet been acknowledged, doing incredible works, helping those in the Ukraine, taking care of immigrants who have escaped from persecution in their own countries. All over the world, we are seeing and hearing of incredible things. We do not yet know the names of the eagles that have lifted the consciousness to bring about change. They are still eagles unaware, but they will be known. Personal empowerment is our birthright as the sons and daughters of the Most High. It's not about changing the face of the world, the face of the nation, the face of the state, or the face of the community. It's about living our lives authentically with love, empowered with the commitment to know and exemplify who we really are. Namaste.